An army of ripped men chant in the rain while holding Yukido, who has been sealed in a wooden ceremonial container. He has a bored look on his face as he wonders what nonsensical ritual they have roped him into this time around. The group stops at the end of a cliff met by the ocean, and two of the members tells the leader that his successor has been brought. As he addresses the crowd, it is revealed that he is Yukido's father, founder of this sketchy-looking sect. His son will be entering the ritual of Musubi. This is not a surprise for him because he has had many unreasonable things happen to him since he was young. Presently, he has accepted the fact that his life has come to an end. His dad explains that Yukido will be submerged in the water where he will overcome death and rise as the new leader of the sect. As they bring him forward, he shouts at his dad to stop with the madness and tells him that what he's about to do is straight up first degree. His old man is not interested in his pleas as he gives him a thumbs up, letting it be known that it's part of the ritual. Yukido already knows that there is no getting through to him, so he just surrenders to his fate. His father pleads with him not to fret as he holds a pendant he gave him. He believes that Mitama, the god they worship, will have him. He shouts that his son should believe so that he will be blessed with the supreme sacred treasure. This is stated just before they toss him into the water. He screams as he bounces off the cliff, falling face first. As he sinks into the depths of the ocean, his life begins to flash before his eyes. The cult has always gotten in his way during his life, which caused him to be isolated in school with no friends. He also had to undergo some tough training from his dad. The relentlessly terrible things that he had to endure, and coupled with the fact he confirmed that he has the worst luck, caused him to have a permanent soulless look in his eyes. He chants some words from the cult and finds himself in a new location. Aluril greets him good morning in a unique way, but she later apologizes for her harassment. As a show of remorse, she promises to serve him until he is completely healed. The lady reveals that she works at the local restaurant so he can eat there anytime he wants for free. Yukido takes a moment to look around the scenery and feels like he has seen this fantasy world before. He quickly figures that he has been transported. Aluril is just happy that he feels better as she refers back to the book that she was reading. Yukido assumes she knows all the typical transportation tropes and asks Aluril the location of the Adventurers Guild. She is confused at first, but he explains that it is a job association where adventurers meet to exchange information. She just takes it as he wants to work in the village, so she shows him the way. He follows thinking he's going to be an adventurer in an alternate world with swords and magic. This is something he has always dreamed of. His excitement is taken down a notch as he finds himself farming. He wonders if this is a quest as it's too boring of a start. His thoughts are interrupted when Roy puts on the tough guy act to intimidate Yukido. He states that all the girls in the village belong to him, so if he lays a finger on any of them, they are going to have a problem. Before he can finish his sentence, Glenn breaks his character by hitting and telling Roy to stop hassling the new guy. He introduces himself and Roy, who is not a threat. Yukido also gives him his name. Glenn informs the newcomer that he has a job for him. He gives him a worn-out dagger, and Yukido takes it assuming that it is a starter weapon. He asks a confused Glenn if he's to start vanquishing goblins. The guy puts the blade close to his face like a badass main character. The real reason for them giving him the blade is shown as he cuts down the vines to harvest some grapes. Glenn reveals that they don't have enough people to bring in the harvest, so they are really happy that he can help. Yukido thinks that he's being tested as they have him do boring quests. He accepts the challenge and quickly harvests all the grapes. Glenn informs him that he harvested too much, and they don't have a means of preserving it. They take it to the tavern, and Yukido uses the surplus grapes to make happy juice. It is there in such abundance that Aluril's older sister Suluril creates a human pyramid and pours the drink over them to enjoy. It has been a month since Yukido arrived, and he has been plowing the ground, taking care of the livestock, and becoming the village feed juice maker. He plants his face on the table depressed because things were supposed to be exciting. All the while, Aluril complains to her older sister for having too much fun and not doing enough work. The two sisters live in and run the tavern. He is happy that he has made good friends that like to party but wanted the typical fantasy world with swords and magic. On a later day, he's back out tending to the farm when a random resident jets out of the forest, alerting everyone to run. Shortly after, he is chased by a strange beast. It turns to them and begins to rush toward them. Yukido starts to panic as he is fully aware that he's not capable of dealing with such a creature at the moment. Roy pulls out a book instructing the newcomer not to worry. He begins to move his hand in an odd motion. This gets Yukido excited as he thinks that he's about to finally witness some real magic. However, Roy disappoints him as he asks them to run. After doing nothing, they narrowly manage to escape the monster. Roy has a smug look on his face as he comments on how much of a close call things were. He turns to Yukido, informing him that they were lucky to have gotten away with this amount of damage. Yukido disappointedly notifies him that they didn't fight. He finds it embarrassing that all they did was run. The newcomer grabs Roy by his top, wanting to know why he didn't fight. He just looks at him confused before explaining to him that they don't stand a chance against the strange beasts. He shakes Roy out of frustration while the guy informs him that the book he pulled out is only a strategy book on how to escape the monsters. They return to the village, and Aluril tends to his wounds as he internally points out what he has learned about his new world. Magic doesn't exist, so wounds are treated manually. Just as soon as he is taken care of, everyone gathers to party again. Aluril points out out that everyone in the village has become happier since his arrival, so she wants him to stay with them forever. Although it is not exactly what he wanted, he thanks his god for sending him to this world. Aluril looks at him confused because she doesn't know what that word means. He later takes a stroll in the woods as he reveals that this world doesn't have the concept of gods, religion, or any sort of spirituality, so he wonders what the burial practices are in the world. Just as he comes to a realization, Aluril and Roy appear behind him worried because they didn't see him when they woke up. The blonde guy confirms their friendship before he confides in him that he has heard of a forbidden book that even the mention of it could get one in big trouble. Yukido gets excited that finally there is some exciting information that could lead to a world mystery that needs uncovering, but he gets extremely disappointed when he finds out that that hype was for lewd books. The trio visit the imperial capital. They ask Yukido if it's his first time. Roy points out a futuristic-looking structure and tells him that it's the imperial palace. Everything they know about the world and how to live in it is taught by the emperor. He also advises him to avoid talking to anyone from the city. He explains that their village is despised. As he looks around, he notices everyone glaring at them. Roy quickly changes the topic as they reach their destination. They enter the bookstore, and when Yukido opens the books, the other two overreact and call it lewd, but upon closer inspection, they are just bad drawings of nothing. The other two walk out of the shop with some not safe for work material in their mind, but in reality, it's pretty tamed. Yukido sees a group of people in the square, so he goes to have a look, and to his surprise, he sees guards standing behind some men who take a substance which ends them. The newcomer is shocked by what he is seeing. The guards check and announce to the crowd that the day's end of life has concluded smoothly. Aluril pulls him away as he looks distressed. She lets him know that the country has what is called the end-of-life system. When the country orders it, the chosen people must delete themselves. Yukido is outraged after hearing this. Roy adds that they are kind of special, so they get treated differently, but he shouldn't worry about these things for now. As they walk away, Aluril overhears people calling them defects, wondering why their isolation camp has not been disposed of. Later that night, Aluril interrupts Yukido's sleep and tries to tie him up like the books she was reading instructed. After apprehending him, she reveals that the people in the village are outcasts. She even shows him the branding that those sent to the village are marked with to differentiate them from everyone else. Anyone who fears the end of life or doesn't align with the country's ways is banished to the village. She is happy that Yukido doesn't look at them with disgust, but he instead laughs and interacts with them. The guy has even taught them a thing or two during his stay. He comments that they are the first friends he has made, so he's rather fortunate to have met them. Yukido gives Aluril his necklace when she admires it. Meanwhile, Sayuril, Roy, and Clen sit to discuss an important topic. The older sister looks down depressed about some news. Roy refuses to accept her verdict and promises to fight. The following morning, Yukido wakes up to find that the place is empty, so he wonders if the girls didn't open for business. He makes his way out and finds Roy badly beaten on the floor. He rushes to him asking what happened. The guy tells him that the girls have been taken. Since they are looked at as deviants, they are not instructed to end their lives. Instead, they have it forcibly taken. With tears in his eyes, he reveals that today is Aluril and Sayuril's day. Yukido gets mad that he didn't inform him of this important fact sooner. He begins to walk towards the capital, but Clen comes with a ride for them to get there faster. Unfortunately, at the capital, Sayuril has already been lost as her sister watches in shock. The senior guard comments that they are short on time, so he orders them to finish Aluril with a sword. She is thrown to the floor, and just as her life is about to be taken, Yukido has his hero's entrance. He swiftly takes out the first wave of guards, and after a short while, he is surrounded by those who want to know who he is. He gets angry when he sees the state of Sayuril and asks why is it that they have to suffer. Bertrand steps forward stating that they are deviants who fear the end of life, and it shouldn't be so because the citizen must embrace it. After listening to him, he figures that their thought patterns are just like a cult. Bertrand draws his weapon as he states that the isolation camp is a sign of the Emperor's mercy. Before Yukido can react, he is taken out by the high ranker, and he then ends Aluril. As the two bleed out, Yukido grabs his protective necklace and pleads for Mitama to save them. His pleas are heard, which summons her into the world. She drops down happy that Yukido finally called her, but she gets angry when she realizes that he's dead. She uses her power to engulf Bertrand and his men for their transgression. The goddess then brings the two back to life, which surprises them. She disturbs Yukido a little before formally introducing herself. Looks like his dad was onto something. Sayuril and the other victims also get revived by Mitama's powers. Aluril excitedly rushes to her sister with joy to see her alive again. The goddess reveals that she wasn't planning on reviving anyone else but Yukido. The others were just a byproduct of her overflowing power. Yukido looks down at her a little surprised that she could bring back the dead to life and wonders if she's a god. The capital residents just witness the miracle but turn at once, leaving the area as if nothing happened. Yukido notices and finds their behavior odd. They later return to the isolation camp. The others are shocked to see them alive even though they are a little ruffled up. Roy rushes to hug Sayuril, but she swiftly dodges his affection. The residents call for a celebratory drink. They head straight to the tavern to let loose. All the while, Yukido is a lot more reserved as he thinks about how lucky they were to get out of that situation alive. He begins to stress that he has annoyed everyone at the imperial capital and now wonders what his next move should be. The newcomer doesn't have any means to protect the village for now. The place is a backwater residence, so they don't stand a chance against the capital from both a military and economic standpoint. Mitama is the only thing that they may be able to count down on, Roy disrupts his thoughts, wanting to know why he's all depressed before dousing him in happy juice. Upstairs, Alural fights with Mitama while in an effort to get her into some clothes, but she's more interested in trying to get back to Yukito's side. Since Alural has feelings for Yukito, she wants to know what kind of relationship Mitama has with the newcomer. She tells her that she's his god, but she doesn't understand that word since that concept doesn't exist in that world. The goddess explains that it means they're together till death. She misinterpreted it as that they are married and begins to get depressed, not only because he's taken but of his choice of wife. While she's in that state, Sileual finds a nice typical anime goddess dress for her to wear. The older sister explains that Alural loves Yukito. Now that she understands the situation, Mitama walks over to her, expressing her happiness that Yukito has finally found people that like him. After getting Mitama's blessing, Alural quickly figures that they don't have a romantic relationship, which makes her happy. Back downstairs, Yukito sits with Clan, wanting to be filled in on the important details about the country. He still can't fathom why there is a compulsory end to a person's life. The resident explains that the end-of-life system was established hundreds of years ago by the Emperor and the Parliament. Before he can expand, Mitama excitedly interjects with a headbutt to Yukito's back. They are confused about who the stranger is, so he explains that she came from the same country as him and adds that they have known each other for a long time now. Roy sees Mitama and becomes an instant fanboy, but she rejects him so hard that his reaction disgusts everyone. He becomes less useful than a baked potato as he stands there with a glazed look in his eyes. All the while, Yukito is interested to know what kind of miracles her powers are capable of. She enlightens him on everything. His line of questions becomes more specific about his current predicament. He wants to know if she can defeat an entire country's army. She motions a wave to indicate how easy it will be. Hearing this is music to his ears. He recalls that because his father's cult only worshipped Mitama, it made her pretty powerful. Yukito is happy because he thought that he was reborn into this fantasy without the standard cheat skill, but Mitama being summoned acts like one. She offers to show him how she creates a flood, but Yukito rushes to stop her, thinking that she's about to cause a lot of damage. However, to his surprise, it only moves the happy juice in a cup, which spills all over Roy, who still lies there devastated by that rejection. Since he has lost some honor, Sileual rudely tells him to clean it up, which he begins to do immediately. Yukito is a little underwhelmed by that display. She too notices something is wrong, so she casts a spell on the table that tells her the number of followers she currently has. She can't believe that the number is 0. Mitama explains that the more followers a god has, the more powerful they become. So with 0 followers, there isn't much she can do. This only makes Yukito mad because she should have known that she was coming to another world so she wouldn't have any followers. Mitama turns the table, asking why the number is 0 since he's around. He looks away a little embarrassed as she complains. She used the last of her powers to save his life and he doesn't believe in her. Their little fight is disrupted when a village rushes in to tell them that the people from the imperial capital have started to investigate the incident. This gets the others immediately worried because that means they will surely come to the village to cause trouble. Roy tries to calm everyone down as he states that Yukito will interject again, but the newcomer gives the most unconvincing response. His words put the rest at ease as they continue to celebrate, but Mitama notices his worry as he leaves the party. Yukito makes his way to the hot springs alone to panic about the whole situation. He gets startled when Mitama joins him, so he throws her away out of reflex. He apologizes but tells her to stop following him everywhere. She informs him that she worries about his strange behavior, so he reveals that it's his fault the village might be attacked and destroyed. She suggests that they run away before the danger comes, but Yukito refuses to escape from the situation as usual. He confirms for Mitama that if she gets some followers, she will be able to use her power. Yukito has decided that he will make her a deity by creating a religion and making her the first god of their current world. They target Roy first as they talk to him. He's too busy in his world. Nevertheless, he hears everything and agrees to become their first follower. Mitama checks and he has been countered. She is happy but attacks Yukito for not believing. Alural watches on as she cleans the tavern tables. Chilchil, their pet, prompts Alural to pick it up while they watch on. All the while, the religious trio sit at their first meeting where Yukito gives his target to reach 10,000 followers before the army comes to attack them. Mitama adds that with that many followers, she could reduce cities to ashes among other things. Yukito points out that the effective way for them to amass followers is to perform miracles. However, right now Mitama is a shell of her former glory, so he decides to start with a speech. His father taught him how to write in a way that will excite the followers. Mitama suggests that they let her do it because she has over 10 billion years of knowledge which she will use to impress the prospects. The day of the speech arrives, and there is a sizable crowd waiting to hear what they have to say. Things get a bit out of hand when Mitama starts talking about Yukito's childhood antics, even showing pictures. He quickly takes over and begins to give Mitama some hype. He uses some basic tricks to announce that Alural is having relationship problems, which impresses the crowd. He keeps the momentum, and just as he's about to win them over, Mitama ruins it by commenting on Alural's weight concerns and that Yukito likes his melon smaller. He tries to assure her that it's not true, but she wants to reduce her assets with an axe. As she's on the floor in despair, the crowd leaves. They return to the tavern where Yukito expresses expresses his frustration given how Mitama messed everything up. She just sits there with a smile on her face as she takes her snacks. She doesn't understand why the villagers don't see her greatness. Yukito refuses to give up and goes back out to try more stunts to gather people's attention, but it doesn't work. They even dress Mitama like a cute doll for a dance, but no one is interested. They head back to the tavern completely deflated. Yukito now respects his dad's efforts a lot more after seeing how difficult it is to grow a following. Their wallowing gets cut short when Aliol rushes in with their poison pet. Yukito suggests that they take it to the vet. Siliul rules that option out, explaining that the high powers don't care for non-human lives. They also don't have the medicine or the knowledge to treat her, so there is nothing they can do. The sisters get a little upset because it's like family to them. Later that night, Yukito returns with a few herbs and explains that Mitama helped him find some that might act as an antidote. They quickly make medicine with it and Yukito feeds it to the creature. Mitama comments that the old him wouldn't have gone to these lengths for anything. He agrees, but now feels like if there is something he can do to better his situation, he will do all he can. Chilchil coughs out a green substance and begins to leave the world. The sisters' cries touch Mitama, so she decides to use all the power she gained from her only follower to revive their pet, and it works. But it turns the goddess old, and it looks like the animator forgot to color her in. The sisters are grateful for the kind act. Mitama checks her follower count and it's up to 3, but the amount of power flowing through her is ridiculous. Yukito is shocked that she gained so much power. The goddess herself notes that this is not normal. She speculates that the sisters must have some kind of special ability. He starts to think that maybe the way someone becomes a follower is also a factor that affects the amount of power Mitama can use. The sisters became followers after seeing the goddess's powers firsthand. On the other hand, Roy is obsessed with Mitama, so he is more down the worship route. She gets too ecstatic with her power-up and promises to get revenge on those who didn't give her a chance. Aliol pleads for a favor. She wants Mitama to revive the men they terminated during the sisters' rescue, but Yukito is a bit reluctant since they are the enemy. Aliol believes that they were just doing their job. Shiruriru is also okay with it and even feels like some might become allies. Yukito thinks back to how dangerous Bertrand was. Mitama revives everyone, and they come back to normal apart from Bertrand, who is now in a female body. They are all a bit confused, and he's not happy with the turn of events. Things continue when Adder, who is a member of the Emperor's army, uses her cybernetic-like abilities to swiftly deal with one of the strange CGI beasts. She alerts HQ that the task has been completed and is assured that the Emperor will be pleased with her work. Meanwhile, at the capital, Bertrand arrives in his new female form, announcing his return to the guard at the gate. The guy just looks at her confused as she states that she has some important news for the Parliament regarding the isolation camp. The guard knocks her to the floor, not believing the words that come out of her mouth because he knows Bertrand to be a man. When she mentions her run-in with the isolation camp, the guard becomes even more hostile, thinking that's where she has come from, and proceeds to send her away with his weapon. With nowhere to go, Bertrand spends the night in the wilderness. She begins to get upset thinking about how a proud knight of the Empire ended up in such a state. She starts to worry about what to do if the Empire abandons her. Roy emerges from the bushes, interrupting her thoughts. He teases her because earlier on, she was talking big about how she would annihilate the village. With a smug look on his face, he also notices some other things, but Yukito comes in and Judo throws Roy into the tree, knocking him out before he can even think of transgressing. He asks if she's okay, but Bertrand responds by charging toward Yukito, blaming him for her current misfortune. However, she pauses just as she is about to draw her sword. Yukito is aware that she was unable to return to the imperial capital. He also knows that without an order from the Emperor, she will never draw her sword, so he admires her loyalty. But he points out the reality that the Empire has discarded her. She tries to argue the point, but he just advises her to accept it. Yukito offers his hand for her to join them as he needs her help. He entices her by promising to create a place for her to stay. She makes it clear that she's only accepting to repay the favor of him saving her. Hearing that she's on board brings a mischievous smile to Yukito's face. Later on, the villagers are attacked by a strange beast while they tend to their farm. Everyone drops what they're doing and run to safety. Big Ricky stands his ground with his hoe in hand, but the others advise him that he doesn't stand a chance. As the monster charges towards him, Yukito and Mitama step forward, offering to take care of the issue. The goddess brings out the ultimate weapon and summons the godly blade that lands next to the brute. As the aura of the blade expands, she gives it hype and orders the guy to use it to defeat the threat. With his heart full of faith, the guy grabs the blade and charges towards the monster. Sadly, when he attacks, the blade does nothing to the creature and it counters by knocking him away. Yukito watches on, mortified, and scolds Mitama for giving the brute false hope by hyping up a useless old sword. She points out that according to legend, it is a strong weapon. He just knew that counting on her was a bad idea. The approach of the monster forces him to pause before he can finish his sentence. Bertrand saves them when she descends with an attack on the monster's head, which halts its charge for a moment, but it recovers after a short while and begins an even more aggressive charge toward her. Bertrand activates her sword and slices it in half with ease. Yukito and Mitama watch on in shock at what they are seeing. Everyone praises her for saving them. Yukido quickly capitalized on the publicity and names her as their religion's holy knight. As the crowd gasp in awe and admiration, Yukido smiles like a villain happy that he has acquired a decent pawn. He asks everyone present to join the religion and promises that their holy knight will protect all their fields from strange beasts. But the locals don't understand the concept. Mitama almost ruins the pitch by being too literal with her explanations, but he covers her mouth. He explains it in a way that the people can comprehend by first starting that it is a group with loose ties and Mitama as their mascot who they can call a god. The villagers don't know what a mascot is, so Yukido says it is like the animal kept by the owners of their favorite tavern. If they become members of the religion that loves Mitama, he promises them that they will never have to fear strange beasts again. This gets the villagers excited, so they quickly join. Yukido is just happy that his move worked. He carries on using crafty methods to get people to join, like persuading Aluril to make it so that only members can drink the happy juice from the tavern. More people join as a result, which is music to Yukido's ears. He next creates an insulated pot that preserves food that is placed inside. Silul tells them that they can get one if they join the religion. It is revealed that Roy is being used sweatshop style to make the pots. The strain is evident when he's shown complaining that he has not slept for 3 days. Yukido glosses over his complaints by informing him that he needs to make an additional 20 pots by the following day. This is his punishment for the earlier transgression. Mitama bluntly informs him that they will work him till he can't no more. As Mitama's #1 fan, he thanks her for the opportunity and begins to work with intensity. Yukido tries to recruit more by having cookies baked. The villages have never tasted such treats before. Silul tells them that they will continue to have access to the cookies only if they join, which they do. To keep the numbers growing, he makes Mitama use her powers to heal the ailments of some more villagers, which turns them into believers. By the close of the day, Mitama checks her follower count, and to her surprise, she gained over 100 followers as a result of Yukido's hard work. He's just happy to see good results after he stopped relying on Mitama's unseasoned charisma. This offends the goddess. The guy notes that in a world that doesn't have concepts like God and religion, making them understand is difficult. However, there is a silver lining in that. Converting them is easier because they don't have any aversion to religion. He is creating a religion where the followers are bound by personal gain and not by a devotion to the deity. Promising food, protection, and healing of ailments is a good start since these gains are easy for people to understand. He's mimicking one of the religions in his previous world that used worldly incentives to attract believers. Yukido later stands alone on a cliff doing the wise old man stance overlooking the village as he wonders how many followers he needs to be able to fight the Empire when the time finally comes for him to punish them for their crimes. He is joined by Bertrand, who has just received some emotional damage after being forced to wear her current maid outfit by the sisters. A tear comes running down her face as she pleads for Yukido to put her out of her misery. He just overlooks it and addresses the topic he wants to discuss with her. He wants to know the number of soldiers the Imperial Army has. She is a little defensive, thinking that he's planning to move against the Emperor. She becomes a bit more open when he informs her that he has no such intentions and that all he wants to do is protect the village. She reveals that it is not the numbers that make the Imperial Army formidable but the Archons. They are a small elite division that the Emperor has direct control over. Yukido is interested to know if they are stronger than Bertrand. She confesses that she is nothing in comparison to them because they have been bestowed special powers directly from the Emperor. According to rumors, one member of the unit is strong enough to erase a mountain. All the while, Adder demonstrates this power, ending another strange creature with ease. She tells HQ that she is moving on to deal with the village that defied the end-of-life system. Back in the village, Mitama enjoys cookies when Yukido comes to find out how many followers she needs to be able to destroy a mountain. She tells him that to unlock such power she needs around 10,000 followers. Hearing this makes Yukido dismal because they only have just over 100 followers. He later returns to Bertrand interested in how her weapon works. When he holds it, he doesn't see anything unusual about the blade. She knocks him down and retrieves her weapon. He just wanted to know how the sword cut through such a big target, as it really shouldn't be able to do that. She demonstrates by activating the sword and effortlessly cuts down a giant boulder. She informs him that there is no trick to it, he just doesn't know how to use it. Bertrand makes the bold statement that the sword can cut through anything. Yukido tries to attribute it to magic. He asks her where a sword like that can be bought because he plans to get a lot so that they can stand up against the Imperial Army. She informs him that it can't be bought and explains that anyone above a specific rank in the Imperial Army is granted a weapon imbued with special powers by the Emperor. No one understands how the power works but the Emperor. With this newfound information, Yukido holds a meeting with Silul and Clan, dubbing them the most intelligent members of the religion. He's looking to brainstorm some countermeasures they can put in place to defend against the inevitable attack from the capital. They can't evacuate as that would lead to an immediate attack. Yukido wishes they had that 10,000 followers needed for Mitama to truly protect the village. Silul tells him that it would be impossible because only about 2,000 people live in the village. The capital limits how many people can live in an isolation camp village. Her comment insinuates that there are more isolation camps out there, so Yukido asks to get get confirmation on his observation. Clan discloses that there are many camps encircling the imperial capital like a human wall that adds extra protection against the strange beasts. Essentially, the undesirables are treated like a giant meat shield. The other villagers smell the happy juice when Silul cracks open a bottle. They rush into the establishment before the meeting has finished and begin to party. During that interim, Adder confronts her colleague called Loki for making her chase after the strange beasts. Adder suspects that Loki is trying to buy more time because she is planning on revolting against the Emperor and the Parliament, but she dismisses the accusation, stating that she's a loyal servant. Back at the village, the party has come to an end and Yukido lies there tired but has a heart-to-heart with Silul about their current situation. She makes a comment that prompts him to remember that his father once revealed how he grew his cult. Almost all his followers were pro-level martial artists, so they defeated scam cults and took their territory and their members. With this template, Yukido calls Clan to tell him that he has parts of a plan to deal with the Imperial Army, but it will destroy the culture of the world. He's shocked to see that Clan is in full support. Yukido states that he's going to take the village 500 years into the future. 1 month later, Bertrand does some recon around the village and is surprised that the capital still hasn't attacked the isolation camp. Her thoughts are interrupted by Adder, who has finally arrived at the village. She gets in a defensive stance knowing that Adder is not from the village. She's very wary because she could sense her presence. Adder checks the database and confirms that the lady standing before her is Bertrand, former captain of the 6th Regiment. Adder is confused about the sex change, and Bertrand is surprised that she figured out who she is. Adder doesn't understand the situation, but she just labels her as a rebel and attacks, but Bertrand dodges. But after a brief exchange, she gets defeated and is dragged by Adder to the village. She looks at the village and is perplexed by what she sees. The villages are using tractors and wind turbines among other things. Things flashback to the moments that led to the villagers' rapid development. Yukido calls a meeting to tell his inner circle of his aim to gain tens of thousands of followers before the Archons arrive at the village. Clan points out that the isolation camp only has 2,000 people. He is aware that their religion has no high culture, nor a charismatic god or founder. This offends Mitama, who is supposed to be their goddess. He reiterates that they have to increase their following by offering incentives to their believers. With that in mind, they have to think outside the box, so he reveals to the rest his plan to take the village forward in time using Mitama's powers. He informs her that he will be counting on her, which makes the goddess happy that Yukido finally believes in her. Unbeknownst to her, the guy gives a sly smirk. He put his plan into motion by having her conjure a harvester, which Roy uses to speedily process his crops. Yukido gathers villagers who watch in amazement. He markets it as an instrument of the goddess, and only those who follow Mitama will have access to the godly tool. Without hesitation, they all agree to the terms and conditions and even begin to fight among themselves over who will sign up first. Yukido stands there with a glow that emanates from his body, wearing that smile again. All the while, Mitama lies on the floor with all the color sucked out of her body. He asks her to provide cultivators, planting machines, and combines for them all. The guy also reminds her to give them fuel. But in her current state, she feels like her life is being harvested. She later recovers and even celebrates the fact that people are acknowledging her greatness as her followers have increased significantly. Yukido puts a damper on her joy when he explains that her new followers are worshipping the farming equipment and not her. She's not too phased because her god powers have strengthened. Mitama gets carried away to the extent that she proposes that they invade the imperial capital, but Yukido, being the voice of reason, points out that with her current following, it will not end well. He is rather thinking of the next thing he can use as an incentive for people to join. Alirul gives him that thing when she stumbles in with a bucket of water that pours all over her. She complains about going to fetch another bucket from the well. Within no time, Yukido has Mitama construct running water to the place. Alirul has a look of amazement when she opens the tap and the water comes out. Yukido explains that water is divine protection from the goddess. Those who believe will have their homes blessed with this protection. Silurul has already come up with a fun way for them to advertise the water as she sprays him with it while holding bathing suits for them to change into. Shortly after, all the young people in the village gather outside the tavern because they have set up a mini water park for all to enjoy. For someone of Roy's mentality, the scene before him is magical. On the other hand, Alirul is a little shy about the bathing suit her sister made her wear. Silurul uses the fact that Yukido might like it to get her to wear it. They ask the guy, and he gives his approval, which makes Alirul happy. Meanwhile, Roy's system malfunctions as he falls, startled by the sight. Silurul has a more sinister agenda as she plans to use this as a stepping stone to make her sister wear more of such outfits. Mitama emerges from the water in her manga form, complaining that he made her build an extensive plumbing and sewerage system to every follower's house. He also made her pump an ungodly amount of water that will be used to service this system. She tries to see the brighter side, proclaiming herself as the god of the land even though she can't take it anymore. Condescendingly, Yukido makes a comment that shows that he doesn't feel like she holds that position. Mitama gets upset with his disinterest in her, despite all the hand working she's putting in. However, she quickly changes to joy when it is made apparent that her followers have increased significantly again. She pats Yukido on the back as she feels that they can bring down divine justice on the empire, but he knows that it's not enough. The Snake Whale Prophet still feels like their religious organization is missing the sense of exclusivity. Not long after, He figures out what it is when he introduces electricity to the village and showcases it by covering the tavern with lights. The believers get excited with his new introduction because it means that they can be active throughout the night. So Yurul and Alurul get a change of uniform for the night shift, which catches the attention of the customers. Alurul is not comfortable with the outfits, but her older sister uses her love for Yukido as a motivating factor to do a good job. She gains a little bit of confidence as they begin to serve their customers. Roy lurks around with his degenerate behavior and gets a kick to the head by Sayurul, which sends him flying. She finishes him with a halogen bulb, which leaves a piece lodged in his head. She serves a warning to any other idiotic customers. All the while, Yukido, Clem, and Bertrand stand on a cliff overlooking the village. Yukido points out that electricity is one of humanity's most important inventions. Thanks to this, they have conquered the night. As he points to his handiwork, he announces that this is what he meant by exclusivity, but this one has taken a great toll on Mitama. Yukido is just not fazed by seeing her in such a state. He points out that she will be back to normal soon enough. Clem comments that the capital doesn't have a view like this and even doubts if the emperor himself has seen such a scene. Bertrand questions him on how he knows this information and comments that he sure knows a lot about the capital for someone who lives in an isolation camp. He acknowledges that he should have been more forthcoming as he reveals that he used to work for the imperial palace. Yukido is surprised that he got sent to the isolation camp despite him having such a high position. Clem removes his shirt showing that he has not received the isolation camp's brand. He states that he lives in the village of his volition because this lifestyle suits him better than what the capital imposes. This confession catches Mitama's attention, but she downplays it. Clem remarks on how he feels like Mitama is stronger than them. He also expresses his interest in the concept of God, which was missing in their world up until this point. Yukido explains that from the world he came from, there were two types of gods. One was used as an entity to explain inexplicable events, and the other was a symbol created by religions. This world not having the latter is not particularly strange, but not having the former means that they don't have inexplicable events in their land. Clem smiles as Bertrand points out that explanation would make the emperor god, since natural phenomena, illness, disasters, and strange beasts are all explained by the assembly who work directly under the emperor. As long as the assembly exists, there isn't anything that they can't understand. Yukido wonders what exactly the country's emperor is. Some time passes and Mitama reveals that they have finally surpassed 2,000 followers and feels like she's overflowing with power. Yukido points out that they have made everyone in the village a follower. To him, this was just a preparation step. Mitama's Super Saiyan power-up is interrupted when Roy barges in to alert them that Bertrand has been beaten and captured by a strange little girl. Adder has moved Bertrand closer to the village and is fascinated by their water system, but she is certain the emperor would know about it. She doesn't believe that the people of the isolation camp created something this complex, so she questions her captive to reveal who the one directing them is. However, Bertrand is tight-lipped, and the interrogation is interrupted by Loki, who wants a status update. She tells her of her findings and questions Loki, suspecting that she was probably aware of this development. Loki speculates that someone with their type of powers betrayed them. Ada recalls they discussed such an archon that went against the Emperor in the past. She feels like a threat to the Empire must be eliminated. She ends her communication with Loki and begins to get frustrated with Bertrand's reluctance to give information. So she threatens to take her limbs. As she proceeds, Mitama attacks from behind, forcing Adder to retreat. The goddess introduces herself, which confuses Adder, but when she continues to talk, the Archon sees that she has similar ideologies to the one that betrayed the Empire in the past. Yukido later arrives and wakes Bertrand up. She informs him that the entity standing before them is an Archon who has come to wipe out the village. Adder fires a beam at them, but Mitama blocks it, which surprises her. The goddess retaliates by summoning some plant-based warriors that begin their assault. Bertrand is shocked that Mitama can fight on the same level as an Archon. Yukido is on edge because he is not so confident that they have gathered enough followers for this matchup. Mitama continues an onslaught of attacks that finally create an opening for her to apprehend Adder. She lands a first blow when the minions come down with spare attacks. She ends things by summoning a giant face that covers her target. The goddess rushes to Yukido, happy that she defeated the Archon. This is short-lived when Adder lets out a powerful attack to escape. She jets into the sky as everyone watches the hands that surround her with horror. Mitama acknowledges her toughness. The goddess is a little worried because she has already used too much of the powers available to her, but she uses the last of her strength to summon some plant serpents. But Adder isn't vegan, so she destroys them in one shot. Yukido watches on, terrified by the power on display by the Archon. Adder comments that she wanted to avoid using this within Empire territory, but they have pushed her to the limit. Back in the village, the others are in the tavern worried. Alurul doesn't feel comfortable sitting around and at least wants to go in support, so she dashes out, which prompts everyone to run after her. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Mitama has a dismal look on her face because she's out of power. She can't believe that she's about to lose to a little girl. Yukido pleads to Mitama to save them as she's their only hope. This gives a little bit of power, so she decides to borrow some strength from all the other gods. A portion of their bodies appear holding their various weapons. Mitama reveals that as a primordial god, she can draw from them. Adder matches the assault with a very powerful beam attack. Mitama does an excellent job holding up till all the gods suddenly retreat to their various realms. The Archon's attack hits her and causes huge explosion. Adder is also in a sorry state from unleashing such power. Mitama cries while apologizing to Yukito for not being able to help. He rushes over to console her. At this point, the others have arrived. Adder charges up one last attack, which she unleashes. All the gang can do is hold each other as the attack lands and destroys the whole area. A sudden click of the fingers brings everyone back, which surprises them all. Adder quickly figures out that it was an illusion. Klen orders Adder to stand down. She immediately recognizes him as Loki, but is confused as to why she's in that form. She reveals to the villagers that Klen never existed. They treated him like he was part of them without knowing he was actually a female who is one of the main Archons. Adder questions the meaning of her behavior, and depending on the response, she will attack. Loki appears behind Yukito and Mitama, stating that the time is ripe for them to assassinate the emperor of the country. That